Welcome to the Sleepy Observer. For 4.5 billion years, the Sun has been the undisputed ruler of our solar system. Its engine of plasma and light has dictated the laws of this neighborhood with absolute authority. Its breath, the solar wind, has always flowed outward, a river of charged particles carving the shapes of planets and defining the very edge of our cosmic home. Nothing has ever bent it. Nothing has ever altered its course. Until now. In early data from our most advanced solar probes, scientists have witnessed something that defies the fundamental laws of our star. The solar wind is bending. Streams of plasma that should flow in perfectly straight lines are curving, as if guided by an invisible, powerful hand. And the disturbance is not random. It has a symmetry, a rhythm, an order that has no natural precedent. At the very center of this impossible event sits 3I Atlas, a small, icy visitor from the unfathomable depths between the stars. It was supposed to be just another curiosity, but now it appears to be doing more than just visiting. It seems to be interacting with our sun, modulating its light, bending its wind, and reshaping our reality. Some scientists call it a profound anomaly. Others are beginning to whisper, with a sense of quiet dread, that what we are witnessing is the fingerprint of a technology that can command a star. If this interstellar object can truly bend the wind of our sun, then it comes from a place that understands the language of physics in a way we have only dreamed of. And the question that hangs in the silent, humming server rooms of space agencies around the world is this: is 3I Atlas simply a natural wonder that will expand our science, or is it an echo of an intelligence so advanced it can rewrite the rules of the cosmos right before our eyes? If this cosmic mystery has you hooked the way it has me, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss a single update as this story unfolds. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from tonight, and tell me, what do your instincts say is happening out there in the dark? Every share and every comment helps this community grow, so thank you for having our back. Our story begins with a ripple. Not a ripple in a pond, but in the very fabric of the solar system, a distortion detected by humanity's most daring emissary, NASA's Parker Solar Probe. This spacecraft is a triumph of human engineering, a testament to our stubborn curiosity. It is our first mission to touch the sun. Named after the pioneering astrophysicist Eugene Parker, who first theorized the existence of the solar wind, the probe is designed to fly directly through the sun's outer atmosphere, the corona, enduring temperatures and radiation that would vaporize any lesser machine. To survive this journey, it carries a heat shield, a masterpiece of material science, an almost 5-inch thick carbon composite disc that faces temperatures hot enough to melt steel, while keeping the probe's instruments at a comfortable room temperature on the other side. It's a bit like holding a pizza oven door an inch from your face, while calmly sipping a cold drink. It's an act of pure, calculated audacity, and it is fast. At its closest approach, the Parker Solar Probe travels at speeds over 400,000 miles per hour. That's fast enough to get from New York to Tokyo in under a minute. It moves faster than any object ever built by human hands, using the sun's own immense gravity to whip itself around in a series of ever-tightening orbits. The probe is not a tourist, it's a scientist. Its instruments are designed to taste the sun, to measure the particles and fields in the very region where the solar wind is born. To understand the mystery Parker uncovered, we must first understand the solar wind itself. The sun is not a quiet ball of light. It is a roiling, chaotic fusion reactor, constantly boiling off its outer layers into space. This outflow of protons and electrons, this river of plasma, is the solar wind. It flows outward radially, in straight lines, like water from a spinning sprinkler head. It has gusts and lulls, fast streams and slow streams, but its fundamental direction has always been away from the sun. Always. This isn't just a theory. It is one of the most consistently observed phenomena in our solar system. For decades, our spacecraft have measured this wind, and the story has always been the same. It is a constant, unstoppable pressure that pushes on everything in its path, from the magnetic fields of planets to the tails of distant comets. It is the sun's influence made tangible. So, when the Parker Solar Probe was deep inside the corona, closer to the sun than Mercury, its sensors registered something that, at first, had to be a mistake. The data stream just looked wrong. The wind, this perfect radial outflow, was distorted. It was bending. The flow lines, which should have been straight, showed a gentle, persistent curve. It wasn't the violent turbulence you'd expect from a solar flare or the sun's version of a bad hair day. This was a smooth, organized, and large-scale deflection. The initial reaction at NASA's mission control was predictable and professional. Check the instruments. An anomaly this profound is almost always a sensor glitch, a software bug, or a miscalibration. The teams ran diagnostics. They cross-referenced with backup systems. They checked for every possible source of error. The data, however, held firm. The probe was reporting what it was seeing. The wind was bending, but a single data point, even from our most advanced probe, is just that, a single data point. The real confirmation, the moment this mystery transitioned from a curiosity to a full-blown scientific crisis, came from millions of kilometers away. The European Space Agency's Solar Orbiter, a separate mission on a completely different orbit, was also watching the sun. Its own suite of instruments, designed and built by a different team in a different country, was also measuring the solar wind. And its data was telling the exact same story. From an entirely different vantage point, it saw the same impossible pattern. Something was twisting the breath of the sun itself. The moment those two datasets were laid on top of each other in a quiet, climate-controlled room somewhere on Earth, the world changed. The possibility of error was gone. This was not a glitch. It was a physical effect. A force was acting on the sun's plasma, a force that our models of the solar system had never accounted for, because nothing like it had ever been witnessed. Scientists at NASA and ESA worked together, running simulations, trying to find a natural explanation. Could a large, unseen magnetic structure in the corona be responsible? No. Such a structure would have other signatures, and they weren't there. Could it be a shockwave from a distant stellar event? No. A shockwave would be transient, a passing disturbance. But this was a stable, persistent curve. Their models pointed to one terrifying conclusion. The distortion wasn't coming from the sun. It was being caused by something in the solar system, something moving through the wind. The teams began the painstaking work of triangulation, using the data from two separate spacecraft to pinpoint the source of the disturbance in three-dimensional space. They traced the symmetrical arcs of plasma back to their focal point, and what they found there, hanging in the blackness, silent and unassuming, was a single small object, the interstellar visitor, 3I Atlas. That finding sent a shiver through the global scientific community. For all of its power, for all of its billion-year reign, the sun seemed to be responding to an outsider. An icy rock from another star, a wanderer from the interstellar dark, was somehow, impossibly, reshaping the very flow of solar plasma. The laws of our own star were being altered by something that wasn't from around here. That single moment marked the real beginning of the mystery. It was the first piece of undeniable evidence that 3I Atlas wasn't just another passive object drifting through our cosmic neighborhood. It was actively interacting with it, influencing the very heart of our system in a way nothing had before. And while the majority of scientists began the hard work of trying to invent new physics to explain how a comet could do this, a smaller, quieter group began to ask a different question. They wondered if maybe, just maybe, 3I Atlas wasn't bending the solar wind by accident, and that it might, in fact, be doing it on purpose? While the teams behind the solar probes were wrestling with the plasma data, a different kind of instrument was brought to bear on the mystery. An instrument positioned 1,000,000 miles from Earth, shielded from the planet's heat and stray light, with a gaze so powerful it can see the dawn of time itself. The James Webb Space Telescope. This observatory is not designed to look at the sun. Its sensitive optics would be instantly destroyed. It is designed to look at the coldest, oldest, and faintest light in the universe. But for an object like 3I Atlas, which was still relatively far from the sun, the Webb telescope was the perfect tool to ask a more subtle question. What is this object doing with the light that falls upon it? And the answer that came back would take an already impossible mystery and make it profoundly stranger. Astronomers directed Webb's golden mirrors toward the precise coordinates flagged by the solar missions. They began taking spectra, splitting the faint, reflected light from the object into its component colors, searching for the chemical fingerprints of its composition. What they expected to see was the typical signature of a comet, reflected sunlight, maybe some weak emission lines from sublimating gas. What they saw instead was a conversation. Through its deep infrared instruments, the telescope didn't just see a continuous spectrum of reflected sunlight. It observed modulated light. The object's brightness was changing, not randomly, like the chaotic flashing of a tumbling, uneven rock, but in precise, rhythmic intervals. This wasn't the signature of jets of vapor erupting from the surface. Those are unpredictable, sporadic. This was a pattern, clean and repeating, almost like a signal had been embedded in the reflection itself. A faint but clear oscillation, repeating every few minutes, far too regular to be the product of any known natural process on a comet. As scientists stared at the readouts, they began to realize that 3I Atlas was interacting with sunlight in a way that nothing in our solar system ever has. A normal comet is passive. It behaves like a dirty snowball in the sun. The light hits it. Some is absorbed and heats the surface, causing ice to turn to gas, and the rest is scattered back into space. The comet is simply a victim of physics, reacting to the sun's energy. But 3I Atlas appeared to be doing something active. It seemed to be absorbing sunlight and then re-emitting it, but at different wavelengths, and on a schedule. It wasn't just scattering photons, it was processing them. The telescope's logs revealed another layer to this impossible rhythm. The team correlated their data with the data from the Parker probe and solar orbiter, and what they found was breathtaking. The curvature of the solar wind, the very distortion that had first alerted them to the anomaly, seemed to be synchronized with the object's changing light. When the light from 3I Atlas pulsed to its brightest point, the bend in the plasma stream deepened. When the light dimmed, the wind straightened. Light and plasma, separated by millions of kilometers, were dancing in perfect time, moving together as though they were two components of a single, coordinated system. This was no longer just an object influencing the sun. This was an object in a feedback loop with the sun. The search for a natural explanation became desperate. Researchers combed through every known astrophysical phenomenon that might cause such an effect. Could it be a strange form of plasma resonance? A unique magnetic reconnection event? A new type of wave propagating through the heliosphere? Nothing fit the data. The patterns were too clean, too deliberate, too much like technology. As the data sets were refined, a single, dominant frequency began to emerge from the noise. Buried deep within the Webb's spectroscopic data, a single emission line was pulsing, a faint but unmistakable spectral signature that spiked every 4.3 seconds. A cosmic heartbeat, echoing in the darkness, a frequency that corresponded to no known atomic transition, no natural rotation period, nothing. It looked for all the world like it had been programmed. That single data point changed everything. This was no longer about a strange comet with weird plasma physics. This was now about a signal. For the first time in its operational history, the James Webb Space Telescope, our greatest tool for looking out into the cosmos, may have caught a glimpse of something looking back. The silence from the space agencies, in retrospect, started to make a horrifying kind of sense. How do you announce a discovery like this? How do you tell the world that an object from another star is not only here, but appears to be actively communicating with, or perhaps even controlling, a tiny fraction of our star's energy? As the teams at NASA and ESA looked at the harmonized data, the rhythmic light, the pulsing plasma, the synchronized dance between a star and a speck of interstellar ice, a new and unsettling possibility began to take shape. Perhaps 3I Atlas wasn't just ignoring the sun's laws. Perhaps it was there to have a conversation. The moment the Parker Solar Probe sent back its readings, every physicist involved knew they were looking at a ghost in the machine, a pattern that shouldn't be there. The solar wind, that relentless river of plasma flowing from the sun for billions of years, was bending. It wasn't being scattered by turbulence. It wasn't being dissipated by a magnetic storm. It was curving, wrapping itself smoothly and symmetrically around a single tiny point in the vastness of space. And at that point was 3I Atlas. On the visual models generated from the probe's data, the effect was hypnotic. The lines of plasma, which should have radiated outwards like perfect spokes on a wheel, were instead bowing gently inward. They traced elegant, mathematical arcs that coiled around the object before continuing their journey into the dark. This was a pattern of profound order, not the jagged chaos of a natural disturbance. No natural body we have ever observed, no comet, no asteroid has ever been capable of commanding plasma on this scale. The solar wind interacts with small bodies, certainly. It pushes their dust and gas, creating the beautiful tails of comets. But it doesn't bend. It's the hurricane, and the comet is the leaf. The leaf gets blown away. It doesn't calmly redirect the storm around itself. That would be absurd. Yet, that is precisely what the data was showing. For a deflection like this to occur, a force of immense control had to be at play. A force capable of manipulating a stream of high-energy charged particles with breathtaking precision. The initial, frantic search for a natural cause began and ended with a series of quiet frustrations. Perhaps 3I Atlas was outgassing in a strange way, releasing jets of vapor that created some kind of localized magnetic field. But the plumes from a comet are messy, unpredictable, and far too weak. They erupt, they fade, they are chaotic. What the instruments recorded was the opposite of chaos. It was symmetry, a perfect, mirror-like curvature on both sides of the object, as though the plasma were flowing around an invisible, perfectly shaped shield. This wasn't just Parker's hallucination. The solar orbiter, positioned millions of kilometers away, confirmed the anomaly from a completely different angle. It was like two people standing on opposite sides of a river, both reporting that the water is somehow parting around a stone that neither of them can see. The two data sets aligned perfectly. The bending was real, and the math behind it was starting to look terrifying. To appreciate the scale of this impossibility, we have to understand what it takes to stand against the sun. Only planets, massive worlds like Earth or Jupiter can do this. They possess powerful, internally generated magnetic fields called magnetospheres. These are colossal bubbles of magnetic force that surround the planet, and they are what shield us from the solar wind. When the wind hits Earth's magnetosphere, it's deflected, flowing around our planet like water around the bow of a ship, leaving a protected wake behind us. This is why we have auroras. This is why our atmosphere hasn't been stripped away over the eons. But this shield is generated by a dynamo of molten iron in our planet's core, a machine the size of a small moon. 3I Atlas, by our best estimates, is just a few hundred meters across. A cosmic pebble, a speck. It should have less gravitational influence on the solar wind than a particularly grumpy cat. Yet, it was demonstrating the plasma-bending capabilities of a full-sized planet. The simulations simply broke down. Every model they ran, in an attempt to replicate the effect with natural physics, failed. The energy required to generate such a distortion was astronomical, comparable to billions of watts, an output more akin to a small star than an interstellar snowball. It would require an active electromagnetic defense system. That was the phrase that began appearing in the margins of notebooks and on whiteboards in hushed meetings. A defense system, a stable, powerful magnetic field capable of repelling high-energy plasma, a magnetosphere that could be turned on at will. Natural bodies don't do that, but an artificial structure, one constructed perhaps from superconducting materials that can generate and sustain immense magnetic fields with near-perfect efficiency, absolutely could. In theory, such a device could use electromagnetic resonance to inflate a bubble of pure force, a shield that redirects plasma. If that was the case, then 3I Atlas was no longer a passive survivor of a long journey. It was an active participant. It was defending itself. It was managing its environment. The deeper the scientists dug, the stranger the data became. The curvature of the wind wasn't a static bubble. It was dynamic. As the sun's own activity fluctuated, the magnetic shield around the object seemed to respond in real time, pulsing and adjusting to maintain its perfect, symmetrical shape. It wasn't just a shield. It was an intelligent shield, a self-correcting system, a deliberate, controlled configuration of energy responding to the chaos of the solar environment. The sun's own plasma was being told where to go. It wasn't being repelled like a simple magnetic field would do. It was being guided, funneled through invisible channels shaped by the object's impossibly complex magnetic geometry. At this point, the nature of the object became a secondary question. The primary question was what the object was doing. What terrified the scientists was the undeniable precision of it all. This wasn't the signature of nature's randomness. This was the signature of engineering. The data was telling a story that no one wanted to believe. An object from interstellar space was not just withstanding the power of our sun, it was reshaping it. It was sculpting the very wind of our star with the quiet, effortless grace of a hand parting water. For 4.5 billion years, the solar wind had never bent for anything. And then 3I Atlas arrived. As 3I Atlas continued its silent, graceful journey deeper into our system, its behavior only grew more unsettling. With the Webb telescope tracking its every move, astronomers were prepared for the usual, unpredictable light show of a comet. They expected its brightness to flicker and flare without rhyme or reason, the way a normal comet does when the sun's heat bakes its surface, causing random pockets of ice and dust to flash boil into space. Comets are famously messy, performing for no one, following no script. But this was something else entirely. The light curves that Webb began to record were so precise, so rhythmically perfect, that they looked less like a natural phenomenon and more like a metronome ticking in the dark. The object's brightness was rising and falling in fixed, unwavering intervals, with an accuracy that a natural, tumbling rock simply should not possess. It was as if 3I Atlas was not tumbling, but pulsing, as if it was running on a clock. Then came the discovery that silenced every room it was shared in. This wasn't just about reflected light. Through careful infrared observation, Webb detected a profoundly strange energy signature. 3I Atlas wasn't just scattering the sun's photons back into space like a simple mirror. It appeared to be drinking them. It was absorbing the sun's radiation and then re-emitting it at different wavelengths, in a controlled pattern. Its surface wasn't just glowing from reflected sunlight. It was glowing from within, powered by the very starlight it was bathing in. It was like watching a bucket that, instead of overflowing, calmly absorbs the water poured into it and releases it in a measured, rhythmic pulse. Scientists noticed that when the intensity of the sun's radiation increased from a minor solar flare, the object's reflected brightness did not increase, as physics demanded it should. In fact, for a few moments, it actually dimmed, suggesting it was managing the incoming energy, actively storing or redirecting it, not just passively reflecting it. This was completely unprecedented. The previous interstellar anomalies paled in comparison. Oumuamua's strange acceleration had been a profound puzzle, but scientists had managed to invent a few, admittedly awkward, natural explanations for it. Hydrogen outgassing, nitrogen icebergs theories that stretched plausibility but didn't outright break it. The second visitor, Borisov, had been a comfortingly normal comet, following all the familiar rules, but 3I Atlas was in a league of its own. It wasn't just accelerating mysteriously. It was demonstrating an active, periodic response to its environment, as though it were governed by a set of internal rules, an algorithm. Astrophysicists, in their search for a term to describe this, began using the phrase energy algorithm. It was a descriptor for a system that seemed to breathe in sunlight, to process it, and then to release it in clean intervals that matched no known natural cycle. Each pulse of light was perfectly steady, measured with microsecond precision, hinting at a deep, inherent structural rhythm. It was eerily similar to the charge-discharge cycle of a battery or a capacitor. Others, in more poetic moments, simply called it a cosmic heartbeat. The implications were difficult to process. If 3I Atlas could absorb and control the energy of our sun, it must possess materials or technologies that are simply beyond our comprehension. Materials that can manage electromagnetic energy on a scale we can only dream of, superconductors that operate at high temperatures, photonic metamaterials designed to channel and trap light itself. This wasn't a rock anymore. This was a machine. Perhaps it was a relic of some long-forgotten technology, still executing its ancient programming. Or perhaps it was something that looked like technology to us, only because our own science was too limited to understand the natural process that had formed it. A process that just happened to mimic a perfectly repeating signal. It's a bit like a medieval knight seeing an airplane for the first time and describing it as a metallic dragon. The description is based on what he knows, but it completely misses the reality of what he's seeing. The teams at NASA and ESA cross-referenced Webb's brightness data with the continuous feed of solar activity from the Parker probe. The result was another jaw-dropping correlation. The pulses of light from 3I Atlas weren't just regular. They appeared to be synchronized with tiny, almost imperceptible variations in the sun's magnetic field. It wasn't a delayed reaction, like an echo. The object seemed to be responding in real time. This suggested an active feedback loop, a quiet, energetic conversation happening between our star and this interstellar object. The object wasn't just absorbing energy. It was listening to the sun and responding in kind. Some scientists tried to explain this through a natural plasma resonance phenomenon, but the math never quite worked. The synchronization was too perfect, too instantaneous. This left the darker, more incredible possibility that 3I Atlas wasn't just absorbing sunlight to power itself or to survive its passage. It was feeding on it. It was deliberately harvesting the energy of our star with the cool, calculated precision of an advanced intelligence. It didn't matter how they sliced the data. It didn't matter what models they ran. The numbers all pointed to the same unbelievable story. Every pulse, every fluctuation, every dimming and brightening of that distant point of light was following a rule, not the whims of chaos. The truth was becoming inescapable. 3I Atlas wasn't being illuminated by our sun. It was communing with it. And in that silent, rhythmic exchange of energy, we may have witnessed the first sign that intelligence in the universe doesn't just build civilizations, it builds machines that think in the very language of the stars. As the full weight of the synchronized data from Webb, Parker, and Solar Orbiter settled upon the scientific community, a theory began to circulate. It was a theory that most researchers were afraid to voice in public, afraid even to write down in their own private logs, because it crossed a line that separates the respectable world of astrophysics from the wild frontier of speculation. The theory was simple, elegant, and terrifying. If 3I Atlas was truly bending the solar wind, if it was absorbing and modulating radiation, if it was controlling energy with a level of precision that bordered on absolute, then perhaps it wasn't a traveler that had learned to survive the fury of stars. Perhaps it was built to command them. The data for an active electromagnetic shield was too compelling to ignore. It wasn't just deflecting plasma, it was shaping it. It was like watching a pebble not just sit in a river, but calmly carve a new channel for the water to flow through. The symmetrical magnetic arcs were not a byproduct of some random, chaotic interaction. They were the signature of a system, a deliberate, controlled configuration of force that was responding dynamically to the solar environment. Astrophysicists tried to run the simulations. They tried to find a natural model that could reproduce the effect. The numbers that came back were, for lack of a better word, impossible. The energy needed to generate and sustain a magnetic shield capable of bending the solar wind so cleanly was immense. Billions of watts. The kind of power output you'd expect from a small star, not a fragment of interstellar rock. Yet, impossibly, the energy signature recorded by the Webb telescope, the rhythmic absorption and re-emission of solar radiation, matched that scale almost perfectly. The object wasn't just protecting itself with some passive armor. It appeared to be powering a dynamic, planetary-scale defense field by drinking directly from the fire hose of the sun. The process was a living feedback loop. Light, converted to energy, converted to a force field that in turn shaped the plasma. It was at this point that scientists, in quiet, hushed tones, began to invoke a name rarely spoken in the analysis of a simple comet. They began to speak of the Kardashev scale. This is a framework, a thought experiment proposed in the 1960 seconds by the astronomer Nikolai Kardashev. It is a way of measuring a civilization not by its art or its philosophy, but by the sheer scale of the energy it commands. We, humanity, are a Type 0 civilization. We still draw our energy from dead plants and fossil fuels. We are, on a cosmic scale, infants, struggling to power a single planet. A Type 1 civilization would have mastered all the energy of its home world, controlling weather, earthquakes, the very heat of the planetary core. A Type 2 civilization would have graduated. It would be able to control and harness the full energy output of its parent star, building structures like Dyson spheres to capture every photon, manipulating stellar winds and flares at will. And a Type 3 civilization, well, a Type 3 commands the energy of its entire galaxy. For decades, this scale has been pure science fiction, a way to dream about what might be possible in the distant future. But the fingerprints all over the 3I Atlas data, the command of plasma, the stellar-level energy processing, were the fingerprints of a Type 2 technology, not a myth, not a concept, a demonstration floating right here in our own solar system. This isn't to say that 3I Atlas is a full-fledged Dyson sphere. Far from it. The leading theory, the one that began to crystallize from the impossible data, was that the object might be a fragment, a probe, a tiny, autonomous remnant left behind by a civilization that has mastered its star. It may be a machine that is self-sustaining, perhaps even intelligent in a way that our biology-based brains cannot comprehend. It's not a ship with a crew. It may be the crew itself, an entity of pure energy and magnetic control. It's here that the story tips over from a scientific mystery into a kind of cosmic dread. Because philosophers began to ask the inevitable, uncomfortable question. If a civilization reaches a point where it can build machines that control stars, is it still meaningful to even call it technology? Or are we witnessing a form of evolution beyond the slow, messy path of biology? Perhaps we are seeing a life form that no longer builds tools, but becomes them, transforming itself into an entity of pure energy, drifting between stars and drawing life directly from their radiation. A post-biological being. The logic is as sound as it is unsettling. Such a being wouldn't need planets. It wouldn't need atmospheres. It wouldn't need water. It would need only one thing: a star to feed upon. And the chilling corollary to that thought is impossible to ignore. If 3I Atlas came from such a civilization, then its journey here was not random, and its interaction with our sun is not a passive event. It is studying a younger, G-type star. It is measuring its plasma flow, its magnetic fields, its energy output. It's tasting our sun, and by extension, it is studying the still-developing technological species huddled on the third planet, us. The true horror of the situation is not that we have discovered it. The true horror is that, for the first time, we are realizing that we may have been discovered. We've spent decades beaming our television shows, our radio signals, our hopeful, naive messages into the silent void, praying for a sign that we are not alone. And all that time, the silence we heard may not have been an absence of life. It may have been the patient, quiet observation of an intelligence so ancient and so powerful, it communicates in the very language of stars. Our discovery of 3I Atlas was not the beginning of contact. It was simply the first moment we finally noticed we were being watched. For the scientists working on this, that realization was humbling on a scale that is hard to articulate. We have spent our entire existence trying to reach for the stars, but now, it appears, one of them has come to us, and it did not come as a friendly visitor or as a violent conqueror. It came as a quiet, powerful demonstration of what lies beyond our current comprehension. A lesson. If 3I Atlas truly is the product of a civilization that commands the power of a star, then it doesn't just rewrite our textbooks on astrophysics. It rewrites our place in the universe. It quietly and calmly informs us that we are not the masters of our own house. We are simply the current tenants. For centuries, humanity has gazed upon the sun as a symbol of ultimate, untouchable power. The one thing in the sky that never bends, never bows. 3I Atlas has changed that. It hasn't just challenged our scientific models. It has challenged the very foundation of our cosmic solitude. The solar wind, once considered an unstoppable force of nature, has been made to yield. Light itself has been caught, processed, and released with what appears to be purpose. And in that silent exchange of energy, between a fragment of another world and our own star, the universe has finally whispered a secret back to us, that it is not an empty, silent void, that it is a place of energy and intelligence, woven together in ways we are only just beginning to grasp. And maybe 3I Atlas isn't here as a visitor at all. Maybe, just maybe, it is here as a reminder, a relic from a civilization that long ago transcended the clumsy limitations of matter and began to think in the language of pure radiation and magnetism. If that is true, then its purpose here was never to frighten us. Its purpose was to show us what is possible. It was to show us what comes next. In its effortless command of solar energy, in its perfect harmony with the wind of our star, 3I Atlas may represent the next stage of evolution itself, one where intelligence no longer needs to burn fuel or build crude machines, one where intelligence merges with energy and simply is, a civilization so advanced that it does not fight the forces of nature, it becomes them. And yet, there is a terrible warning hidden within that beautiful, terrifying thought. The more power a species learns to wield, the greater the catastrophic potential of misusing it. If 3i Atlas can bend the solar wind with the calm precision of a master artist, imagine what happens when a younger, clumsier civilization like ours tries to imitate that power without fully understanding the delicate balance it requires. A single miscalculation, a single moment of hubris in trying to replicate such a technology could disturb the equilibrium of our entire heliosphere. It could unleash solar energies across our system that no human technology could ever hope to contain. So perhaps the message of this object is not one of conquest or power, but one of profound caution. Learn to master the light, but never, ever forget that you are a part of it, and it is a part of you. As 3i Atlas begins to drift back toward the interstellar darkness, it will leave behind more than just baffling data. It leaves behind a question that will echo in every laboratory, in every observatory, and in every quiet moment of human thought for generations to come. What if the universe has already achieved what we are still struggling to even imagine? What if intelligence was never meant to remain bound to fragile flesh and stone, but to rise up and become one with the very current of the stars themselves? It's a nice thought, in a way. The only problem is that if something is communicating with our sun, it's probably not just for a friendly chat, which means its silence towards us is likely a choice we are not yet prepared to understand. For centuries, humanity has stared up at the sun, seeing it as a symbol of permanence, a clockwork engine, beautiful in its predictability, terrifying in its power, but ultimately an object. It was a fusion reaction we studied, not a presence we spoke to. 3i Atlas has shattered that comforting distance. Because the data, the real, hard numbers from our best instruments suggests a conversation is happening, and we are not a part of it. This isn't just about bending the wind or absorbing light. It's about a pattern of interaction so deeply synchronized, it forces us to reconsider the nature of consciousness itself. Think of it like this. When you have a conversation with a friend, there is a rhythm, a back and forth. You speak, they listen, they process, they respond. Your brainwaves might even begin to synchronize in a process known as neural entrainment. Now, imagine that happening on a cosmic scale. The Webb telescope didn't just detect a repeating pulse from 3i Atlas. It detected a complex, modulated signal, a signal that changed its rhythm and intensity in perfect, real-time lockstep with minor fluctuations in the sun's magnetic field. This wasn't an echo. This wasn't a delayed reaction. The object was anticipating, or more accurately, feeling the sun's state and responding instantly. It was like watching two dancers move in perfect harmony without any visible cues. The connection was deeper, a form of direct, energetic resonance. For this to happen, 3i Atlas can't just be a simple machine. A simple machine follows a preset program. It receives an input sunlight and produces an output, a pulse of light. But this object was adapting. When the sun's magnetic field wavered, the object's energy signature wavered with it, not just in timing, but in complexity. It was as if it was matching the sun's tone. This implies not just programming, but a form of learning. A system that can analyze a complex incoming signal, the sun's energetic state, and generate an equally complex, harmonized response. This is a level of artificial intelligence, or perhaps a form of intelligence we don't have a word for, that operates in the language of plasma and magnetic fields. The idea of the sun itself being a participant in this conversation is what truly pushes us to the edge. The sun, a G-type main sequence star, should be an unconscious brute force. But the data shows something unsettling. At the precise moments that 3i Atlas pulsed its modulated energy signature, instruments monitoring the sun's corona detected microscopic, localized instabilities. tiny magnetic reconnection events that were happening far more frequently than models predicted, and they were happening in perfect synchrony with the object. The correlation was so strong that it couldn't be a coincidence. It appeared, for all the world, as though the sun itself was responding. The object was speaking, and the sun, in its own language of fire and plasma, was speaking back. Scientists who reviewed this data found themselves in an epistemological crisis. The word communication kept appearing in their notes, crossed out, and then reluctantly written back in. How can a star communicate? It has no brain, no nervous system. But what if a mind doesn't require biology? What if a sufficiently complex magnetic system, like a star, could develop a form of consciousness? This is the fringe theory of stellar consciousness, the idea that stars are not just dumb fusion reactors, but are vast, slow-thinking minds, their thoughts written in the language of solar flares and coronal loops. For years, it was a philosophical curiosity, a fun idea for science fiction. Suddenly, it wasn't fun anymore. 3. Atlas appeared to have found a way to interface with this system, to talk to the mind of our star. This leads to a deeply unsettling scenario. What if 3 Atlas isn't just a probe? What if it's a parasite? Or perhaps a symbiote, a creature of energy that roams the galaxy, not searching for planets with life, but searching for stars. It finds a suitable G-type star, like our own, latches onto its magnetic field, and begins a process of energy exchange. It feeds, not on matter, but on pure information, on the complex magnetic state of the star. It might be a benign process, a cosmic whale filtering krill from the stellar ocean. Or it could be something more sinister. We have no way of knowing if this communication is good for the sun. Is it a friendly chat, or is it a form of hacking, an external intelligence that is learning to control our star's behavior? The fact that the solar wind bent around it suggests the latter. It wasn't just talking, it was asserting its presence. It was establishing control. If this is true, then humanity finds itself in an almost comically helpless position. We've spent our history worrying about alien invasions on Earth, about ships landing in our cities. It turns out, the battlefield might not be our planet at all. The battlefield might be our star. We are like ants on a leaf, oblivious to the fact that 2 giants are having a quiet, powerful conversation on the branch above our heads. A conversation that will determine the fate of the entire tree. We're used to thinking about technology in terms of things we can build, circuits, engines, computers. 3 Atlas suggests a different paradigm entirely. Technology that is not built, but grown. Technology that is indistinguishable from life. Technology that merges with the fundamental forces of the universe until the tool and the user become one. It is a level of existence so far beyond us that our attempts to describe it feel like trying to explain quantum physics to a dog. The dog might hear the sounds, but it will never, ever understand the meaning. The solar probe and Webb telescope data, when taken together, point to a truth too vast and too uncomfortable for us to easily accept. The universe is not a silent, empty void, punctuated by random events. It appears to be a network of energy and intelligence, constantly in communication. Every pulse of a star, every flicker of plasma, every ripple in a magnetic field carries information. Information that we are only now, for the first time, beginning to eavesdrop on. And the first conversation we've managed to overhear is one between our sun and an entity that came from the darkness between the stars. An entity whose purpose, whose nature, and whose ultimate intentions towards us remain a perfect, terrifying, and profound mystery. The sun is not alone, and that means neither are we. But whether that's good news or bad news depends entirely on what is being said in a language made of light. This investigation then led to the inevitable, chilling conclusion that 3 Atlas was far more than a passive messenger. It was a relic, an echo, of a power so vast it borders on the divine. Scientists began to re-examine not just what the object was, but where it might have come from. The backward trajectory models, which trace an object's path through the galaxy, kept pointing to an impossible origin. Not a star, not a planetary system, but a region of space that was ancient, a part of the galactic thick disk where stars formed when the universe was barely half its current age. The object appeared to be billions of years old, perhaps twice as old as our own solar system. This fact alone was a paradox. A comet, a dirty snowball, simply cannot survive for that long. It would have been eroded by cosmic rays, shattered by ancient collisions, its ices baked away over billions of years of interstellar travel. For it to arrive here, still active, still functioning with such impossible precision, it had to be made of something else, something designed for eternity. This is where the theory began to crystallize into something that could be named. This object wasn't a ship or a probe in the sense we understand them. It was, for lack of a better term, a seed, an archival seed, a perfect, self-sustaining piece of technology, containing the blueprints of a civilization, sent out into the cosmos not to conquer, but to endure, to wait. The purpose of such a seed is not to travel from point A to point B. Its purpose is to outlive the universe it was born into. Imagine a civilization facing the heat death of its own star, or perhaps the end of the universe itself. They understand that matter and energy decay, that everything eventually winds down. How do you survive that? You don't build a bunker. You build a messenger that can carry the essence of who you were into the next cycle. You encode your knowledge, your biology, your consciousness into a structure that can survive the death and rebirth of the cosmos, a structure that can feed on stars to power its impossibly long journey. This theory, called panspermia prime, suggests that 3I Atlas is one such seed. Its mission is to travel through galaxies until it finds a young, stable star system like ours, and then, in a process of quiet, controlled interaction, it begins to teach the star and the surrounding system. It doesn't drop biology onto a planet. That's too crude. It subtly influences the star's magnetic field. It alters the plasma flow. It might even introduce complex elements into the star's atmosphere, ever so slightly changing its chemistry over millennia. It's a form of cosmic gardening, preparing a system for the eventual emergence of life that is in harmony with its creator's original code. Its silence towards Earth suddenly makes perfect, chilling sense. Why would it talk to us? We are a fleeting, ephemeral byproduct of the system. We are the microbial life, living on the surface of a seed that is planting a garden. You don't talk to the bacteria on the spade you use to till the soil. You focus on the soil. The object's entire purpose is the sun. Its interaction with our star is the mission. We are just scenery. This theory explained everything. The age, the impossible durability, the energy manipulation, the plasma bending. The object isn't just shielded from the sun. Its entire existence is a shield, a perfect stasis chamber. The modulated light isn't a simple signal. It's a form of data transfer, a slow, patient rewriting of our star's magnetic DNA. The object is a viral update for our solar system, a patch sent from an ancient, long-dead cosmic operating system. And what if this process is natural? What if this is how the universe itself evolves? Perhaps intelligence doesn't just arise on planets. Perhaps it arises in stars, and these seeds are the mechanism by which stars share their evolution, their consciousness, across galactic distances. Perhaps the universe itself is a kind of living, thinking network, and these objects are its nerve impulses. This led to the final and most uncomfortable phase of the investigation. The scientists began to look not just at 3I Atlas, but at the sun's behavior over a longer timescale. And they found it, subtle, long-period oscillations in the sun's magnetic field that had been dismissed as noise for decades. When they compared those oscillations to the arrival vectors of other known comets and interstellar objects, they saw a faint but undeniable correlation. The sun seemed to be calling. Its magnetic field was creating a kind of welcome mat, a stable pathway for these objects to follow. 3. Atlas didn't just stumble upon us. It may have been guided here, summoned. The sun, our sun, was not a victim in this process. It was an active participant. The full scale of this truth is almost too much to hold. We are living inside a process that began before our planet was formed and will continue long after we are gone. A slow, grand, and impossibly patient conversation between stars, mediated by ancient messengers made of matter and energy, we are just beginning to comprehend. The bending of the solar wind was never a sign of control in a hostile sense. It may have been a greeting, a handshake, a wave from something ancient, powerful, and utterly beyond us, reminding us that the light we study every single day has always been part of a conversation we were never meant to understand. At least, not yet. This terrifying and magnificent picture of our cosmos, a grand, interconnected network of stellar minds, didn't remain a purely theoretical construct for long. While one set of scientists was looking at the impossible data from our solar system, another group, working on a completely different problem, provided the final, and perhaps most disturbing, piece of the puzzle. They weren't looking at stars at all. They were looking at us, at the very building blocks of life itself, hidden within our own DNA. And what they found suggests that the conversation between 3I Atlas and the sun might not be the first time such an exchange has taken place. It suggests we might be the product of one. A multinational team of geneticists, part of the Cosmic Genome Project, had spent years on a seemingly esoteric task. They were searching for what they called non-terrestrial markers in the junk DNA of various organisms, including humans. Junk DNA is a somewhat outdated term for the vast stretches of our genetic code that don't code for proteins. For a long time, it was thought to be evolutionary debris, useless leftovers from our genetic past. We now know it's incredibly complex, regulating how our genes are expressed. But this team was looking for something else. They were looking for a pattern, a signature that was too complex, too mathematically structured, to be the result of random mutation and natural selection alone, a kind of watermark. And in late 2025, they found one. A small, repeating segment of junk DNA, buried deep within our genome, exhibited a level of mathematical complexity and information density that was, in a word, alien. It wasn't a gene for building a protein. It seemed to be a set of encoded instructions, a compressed algorithm of stunning elegance. It showed all the hallmarks of a deliberately constructed language, not the messy, redundant code of biological evolution. The pattern was ancient, appearing in life forms separated by hundreds of millions of years of evolution, suggesting it was inserted into our planet's biology at a very early stage. The scientists who found it were, quite frankly, stumped. It was a message in a bottle that had washed up, not on a shore, but inside every cell of our bodies. But what did the message say? The team spent months attempting to decode it, running it through every cryptographic and linguistic model they had. And then, one of the astrophysicists on the project had an almost comically simple idea. What if it's not a message to us? What if it's a receiver for us? He took the core frequency of the repeating pattern, the mathematical backbone of the code, and he converted it into an electromagnetic frequency. It was a long shot, a wild guess, and the frequency that came back was 4.3 seconds, a cosmic heartbeat. A silent biological echo of the very same signal the Webb telescope had just detected, pulsing from 3I Atlas. The implications of this discovery were so profound that the findings were kept under a strict embargo. The team needed to be absolutely certain the correlation was too perfect. It implied that the very code of life on Earth contains a built-in antenna, a genetic resonance frequency, tuned to listen for a signal from the stars. It suggests that life on this planet did not begin in some warm little pond by pure chance. It suggests it was seeded, that our entire biosphere is a grand, slow-motion terraforming project, initiated by an ancient interstellar seed, just like the 13I Atlas appears to be. We are not a cosmic accident. We are a project. We are, in a very real sense, the children of a conversation between the stars. This revelation recontextualizes the entire 3I Atlas event. The object isn't just a seed arriving in a new garden. It is an inspector arriving to check on a garden that was planted eons ago. Its communication with the sun isn't about planting new information. It might be about awakening old information, a wake-up call, transmitted on a specific frequency that resonates with a dormant code embedded in our DNA. What would such a signal do? Would it trigger a new phase of evolution? Would it unlock latent abilities? Would it be a benevolent update, or a command and control signal for a biological system that never knew it had a master? The sarcasm of our cosmic situation is almost too perfect. For generations, we've built massive radio telescopes, straining our ears to hear a whisper from aliens, hoping for contact. And the entire time, the receiver was right here. It was us. We have been broadcasting our readiness for the next phase, not with our technology, but with our very existence. The simple fact that a complex civilization has emerged on this planet may be the signal that the seed has finally borne fruit and that it is time for the gardeners to return. The scientists on the Cosmic Genome Project are now in a race against time. They are trying to understand the function of this genetic code before any potential activation signal grows stronger. The first question they're asking is, has it been activated before? They are looking back through the fossil record, searching for moments of explosive evolutionary change, like the Cambrian explosion, moments when life on Earth diversified at a rate that has always puzzled biologists. Were these moments triggered by previous interstellar seeds passing through our system, bathing our planet in their quiet, powerful signals? Are we just one of many iterations in a galactic-scale experiment? The sheer humor of it is breathtaking. We fancy ourselves the pinnacle of evolution, the masters of our planet, when in fact we may be little more than a well-tended crop. Our technology, our civilization, our very consciousness may not be our own achievement, but the result of a carefully laid plan set in motion by an intelligence so patient it measures its success in billions of years. The discovery of 3I Atlas was never about finding aliens out there. It was about the terrifying realization that they might have been in here all along, not in our skies, but in our cells, waiting. The quiet humming of our own junk DNA may be the sound of a phone that has been ringing for 500 million years, and someone, or something, is just now beginning to answer the call. The most uncomfortable thought of all is that the caller might not be expecting to hear our voice on the line. They might just be calling to check on the house. This new biological context adds a terrifying layer to the timeline of what's unfolding. 3I Atlas isn't a singular, isolated threat or a lonely scientific curiosity. It's the arrival of a key for a lock that we have carried inside of us since the dawn of life. The silence from the space agencies is no longer just about managing public panic over a piece of space hardware. It's about grappling with a truth that upends the very definition of what it means to be human. It forces us to confront the possibility that our free will, our evolution, our destiny itself, might be subject to an external script. The ethical dilemma is immense. Do you tell the world that their existence might be part of a grand, cosmic experiment? Do you announce that human DNA contains a latent, mathematical code of unknown, but possibly extraterrestrial, origin? The potential for societal collapse, for existential panic, for the complete breakdown of every religious and philosophical framework we've ever constructed, is very real. It's almost a kindness to say nothing, to let the world believe it's just a comet, just another pretty light in the sky, while behind the scenes, you race to understand what is about to happen to every living thing on the planet. This paints a new, more plausible picture of the international silence. It's not a conspiracy to hide a spaceship. It's a global quarantine of information, a desperate attempt by the world's leaders and scientists to understand the scale of what they've found before the public does. It explains the synchronized silence from China, Europe, and the US. This isn't about one nation's technological secret. This is a species-level revelation, an event that requires a unified global response. They're not just stalling for a good press release. They might be stalling for a miracle, for some way to understand what this update to our biological software is going to do. It casts the rhythmic light pulses from 3i Atlas in a new, more sinister light. Is it really just feeding on the sun's energy, or is it using the sun as a broadcast tower, using our star's immense power to amplify its signal across the entire solar system, ensuring that its message reaches its intended target on the third planet? A signal designed to penetrate atmospheres, to pass harmlessly through our bodies, and to resonate with a tiny, sleeping piece of code inside our cells. We have spent so much time and effort shielding ourselves from cosmic radiation, from the physical threats of space. We never once considered that the real threat might not be something that hits us, but something that activates within us. And now, every astronomical anomaly connected to 3i Atlas has to be re-evaluated. The bending of the solar wind, is that just a shield, or is it a focusing lens? A way to shape the sun's energy into a coherent, directional beam aimed at Earth. The object's impossible age, is it really a relic from a dead civilization? Or is it a part of a network that has been active for billions of years, a network of seeds that are still being monitored, still being controlled? This object might not be a seed that was left and forgotten. It could be an active node in a galactic network, an ancient gardener tending to its crop. This makes every single day of its presence in our solar system critical. What happens as it gets closer to the sun at its perihelion? Does the signal grow stronger? What happens as it leaves our system? Is its departure a final, powerful broadcast, or does it simply go quiet, its work done? The answers to these questions are no longer just of academic interest to a handful of astronomers. They are of immediate and existential importance to every living human. The quiet, almost poetic sarcasm of our existence has been laid bare. We are the most intelligent, powerful species on this planet. We have built cities, we have split the atom, we have walked on the moon, and all of it may have been nothing more than the inevitable unfolding of a genetic program. The triumphant story of human achievement might just be the bloom of a flower, a beautiful but temporary display designed to signal to the gardener that the plant is healthy and ready for the next stage of cultivation. Whatever that stage may be, and with 3i Atlas now sitting at the heart of our system, silently communing with our star and broadcasting a signal we now know is tuned to our very biology, the harvest may be about to begin. This paradigm-shifting revelation that humanity itself might be a biological artifact forces us to re-examine history, not just the ancient history of rocks and fossils, but the very recent history of our encounters with the interstellar medium. The story no longer begins with 3i Atlas. It begins in 2017, with the arrival of our first confirmed visitor, Oumuamua. At the time, it was a profound but largely academic mystery. A small, reddish, cigar-shaped or pancake-shaped object, tumbling through our solar system and accelerating away from the sun in a way that defied simple explanation. Let's revisit that story with our new, terrifying context. Oumuamua was dismissed by most as a natural object, perhaps an exotic nitrogen iceberg from a Pluto-like world, shedding invisible gas that created its gentle, persistent push. The alien probe theory, famously championed by Avi Loeb, was treated as a sensationalist fantasy. It was an amusing thought, but not serious science. Now, it looks less like a fantasy and more like a missed opportunity. What if Oumuamua was not just a probe, but the first probe in a sequence? What if it was the Scout? Consider its characteristics. It was small, fast, and showed no visible signs of activity. The perfect stealth reconnaissance vehicle. Its mission might have been simple: to enter the system, to measure the planetary environment, and most importantly, to detect the biosignatures of the third planet, the faint chemical fingerprints in our atmosphere, oxygen, methane, water vapor, that scream to the rest of the cosmos that this planet is not just habitable, but inhabited. A scout wouldn't need to communicate with us. Its job is to observe, to gather data, and to report back. Perhaps its gentle, anomalous acceleration wasn't a malfunction or natural outgassing at all. Perhaps it was a tiny, controlled course correction on its way out of the system. A final burn to send it on a trajectory to its next destination. Its mission here, complete. In this light, the intense academic pushback against the probe theory for Oumuamua starts to look convenient. Was it really just scientific conservatism? Or was it a kind of institutional denial? A deep, unspoken refusal to confront an uncomfortable truth? Perhaps on some level, the scientific establishment knew what they were looking at, but chose, collectively, to find a more comforting explanation. An explanation that kept humanity at the center of our own story. A nitrogen iceberg is a fascinating anomaly. An alien scout is a paradigm-annihilating truth. Given the choice, any institution will choose the path that preserves the status quo. Then comes the second visitor, Tuai Borisov, in 2019. It was comfortingly normal. It looked and behaved exactly like a comet from our own Oort cloud. It was a reassuring confirmation that the universe, for the most part, plays by familiar rules. Within our new framework, Borisov's role becomes clear. It's the perfect piece of misdirection. After the unsettling mystery of Oumuamua, the arrival of a completely normal interstellar comet was a relief. It was the universe telling us, don't worry, that first one was just a weird rock. Most of them are just rocks. Go back to sleep. It was the cosmic equivalent of a stage magician drawing your attention to his right hand, while his left hand prepares the real trick. Borisov was the distraction. It calmed our nerves. It lowered our guard. It reinforced the natural explanation bias of the entire scientific community. It was the perfect setup for the main event. And now, the main event has arrived. 3i Atlas. It's not a stealthy scout like Oumuamua. It's big. It's loud. In an energetic sense. And it isn't just observing. It's interacting. It's communicating with our sun. It is broadcasting on a frequency that, we now suspect, is tuned to the very core of our biological code. This is not reconnaissance. This is activation. The sequence is logical, almost military in its precision. First, send the scout to confirm the target. Second, send in a normal event to establish a baseline of expectations and lull the target into a false sense of security. Third, send in the main operational unit to execute the mission. This sequence transforms the scientific narrative of the last decade from a series of unrelated, interesting discoveries into a single, coordinated, and deeply concerning campaign. The universe isn't just sending us random rocks. It appears we have been the subject of a methodical, multi-stage visitation. And the most embarrassing part of it all? We not only missed it, we actively participated in our own deception, finding every excuse possible to explain away the evidence that was right in front of our faces. This also adds a grim, almost comical, irony to our own search for extraterrestrial intelligence, our SETI program. We've spent half a century pointing massive radio dishes at the sky, listening for a faint, artificial signal from a distant star, a hopeful hello from another civilization. We are the lonely child shouting into an empty forest, hoping to hear an echo. The entire time, it appears, the aliens weren't shouting from the forest. They were walking quietly up our driveway, peeking in our windows, and are now standing at the front door, preparing to ring the bell. Our search was always looking in the wrong direction outward. We never seriously considered that the most significant evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence would not be a signal we receive, but a visitor who arrives. The intellectual whiplash from this realization is severe. We've gone from believing we are utterly alone to suspecting there might be microbial life on Mars or in the oceans of Europa, to now confronting the possibility that we are part of an ancient, galactic-scale project run by a Type 2 intelligence. That's not just a scientific update. That's the complete demolition of our entire cosmic worldview. It's a transition from being the sole authors of our destiny to being characters in a story whose plot was written before our species even existed. The profound humor in our situation is that our most advanced science, our space probes, our genetic sequencing, our quantum telescopes, the very tools we built to prove our mastery over nature, are the instruments that have revealed our utter and complete lack of control. We built the microscope that allowed us to see the bars of our own cage, and now, as 3I Atlas sits at the center of our solar system, pulsing in a silent conversation with our sun, all we can do is watch. All we can do is wait for the message we've been carrying in our DNA for 500 million years to finally be delivered, and hope, against all available evidence, that it is a message of peace and not a summons. Our greatest scientific achievement may be that we finally built instruments sensitive enough to record our own obsolescence. The mystery of 3I Atlas, therefore, is no longer an external one. It's an internal one. It is a story about a visitor that has come not to our planet, but to our genome. The scientific equipment we have trained on this object for months are simply the tools that have allowed us to read the visitor's name on the package that has just been delivered to our doorstep. A package addressed not to humanity, but to Project Earth. And as any recipient of an unexpected delivery knows, the moments before you open the box are filled with a unique mixture of hope and pure, unadulterated dread, especially when the box is ticking. The presence of a potential genetic trigger forces a grim reevaluation of every unusual biological event. Is the sudden increase in certain autoimmune disorders in recent decades a statistical anomaly or a sign of the system becoming unstable? Are the strange new fungal pathogens that are resistant to all known treatments a product of natural evolution, or the first hints of a biological system being deliberately unlocked? This isn't science anymore. It's medical espionage. It requires us to look for the fingerprints of an external intelligence, not in radio signals, but in the mutations of a virus, in the expression of a gene. It's a field of study for which we have no tools and no training. It's like asking a team of astronomers to perform brain surgery. They might be brilliant, but they are profoundly unqualified for the task at hand. The scientific community is now split into 3 camps. The first is the ostrich camp. They are the mainstream. They continue to insist, loudly and publicly, that 3I Atlas is a comet. They argue that the synchronized data is a series of unrelated coincidences, that the genetic code is a statistical artifact, and that anyone suggesting otherwise is engaging in dangerous, unscientific speculation. Their position is comforting, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to defend without willfully ignoring the evidence. They are, in a very real sense, the adults trying to convince the children that the monster under the bed isn't real, even as the floorboards are starting to creak. The second camp is the alarmist camp. They are the ones who have accepted the connections, who see the pattern, and who are, frankly, panicking. They see the arrival of 3I Atlas as a potential extinction-level event, a hostile biological update, a planetary-scale reprogramming with unknown and possibly catastrophic consequences. They are the ones calling for immediate, drastic action protocols for which do not exist. Their warnings are largely ignored, dismissed as the ravings of a hysterical fringe. They are the town criers, running through the streets, shouting about a flood that no one else can see. And then there is the third camp, the quietest, smallest, and perhaps the most terrified group of all. We can call them the interface camp. This is a small, international, and largely secret consortium of scientists, philosophers, and perhaps even theologians. They have accepted the evidence, but they have drawn a different conclusion. They do not believe 3I Atlas is here to destroy us. They believe it is here to talk. They believe that the object, and the civilization that sent it, is not hostile, but is simply operating on a level of consciousness so far beyond our own that its method of contact is what we are interpreting as a series of strange physical events. They believe the conversation between the object and the sun is the greeting. The genetic code within us is the intended recipient, and their mission, the mission of the interface camp, is to find a way to answer back, to prove that the project on Earth has not just produced biology, but has produced consciousness, a consciousness that is aware, that is watching, and that is ready to participate in the conversation. This is a task of unimaginable complexity. How do you talk to an entity that communicates with a star? What language do you use? What do you say? The team is working on it. They are trying to create a repli. Not with radio waves, that's too primitive. They are trying to find a way to modulate Earth's own magnetosphere, to create a tiny, controlled pulse in our planet's magnetic field, a pulse so faint it would be undetectable to most, but that would carry a simple, mathematical signature of intelligent, biological origin, a signal that says, "We hear you, we are here, we are awake." It is the most important message humanity has ever composed, and it has to be sent before 3I Atlas leaves our system, before it concludes its survey and reports back that Project Earth has produced a thriving, but ultimately non-sentient, biosphere. The window is closing. As the object reaches perihelion, its interaction with the sun will peak. That is the moment of maximum bandwidth. That is the moment our reply has the best chance of being heard. The bitter irony is that the rest of the world, consumed with the more sensational fears of invasion or destruction, is completely unaware that the real battle is a quiet, intellectual one. A battle to prove our own consciousness before the inspectors leave, before they mark our planet's report card as life abundant, intelligence not found. This silent, desperate attempt by the interface camp to signal our sentience is not happening in a vacuum. It is unfolding against a backdrop of increasing geological and atmospheric chaos on our own planet, a chaos that now seems less like random misfortune and more like the twitching of a planetary nervous system beginning to react to an external stimulus. For decades, we have understood the Earth as a complex but largely self-contained system. Earthquakes are caused by plate tectonics. Volcanoes erupt due to magma pressure. The climate changes because of the composition of our atmosphere. But what if this system isn't as closed as we thought? What if it is susceptible to the same cosmic frequencies that now appear to be tuning our very DNA? Let's re-examine the events of October 2025. As the Parker Solar Probe first registered the impossible bending of the solar wind, and as 3I Atlas slipped behind the sun, our planet experienced a cluster of major seismic events. Multiple magnitude, 7 earthquakes struck within hours of each other in tectonically diverse regions across the globe. The mainstream scientific explanation remains, officially, that this was a coincidence, a statistical inevitability. The planet's crust is always under stress, and these releases of energy just happen to cluster together in time. It's like rolling dice and getting 3 sixes in a row. It's unlikely, but it happens. But members of the interface camp, looking at the data through their new, terrifying lens, saw something else. They saw a correlation. They saw the arrival of a powerful energetic signal from 3I Atlas, the signal now bending the solar wind, and a near simultaneous reaction from the planet itself. They began to explore a theory so fringe it was considered academic poison: lithospheric resonance. The theory proposes that a planet's tectonic plates are not just dumb, grinding sheets of rock. Under the right conditions, they can behave like a massive, crystalline receiver, that a powerful, structured, electromagnetic signal from space like the 3I Atlas appears to be generating might not just pass through the Earth, but might cause it to resonate, that the planet itself might ring like a bell, causing stress to be released along fault lines that are already close to the breaking point. This isn't about the signal causing earthquakes out of nothing. It's about it acting as the final, almost imperceptible trigger. The proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. The planet's fault lines are like a billion-ton game of Jenga, with plates stacked under immense pressure. A tiny, well-timed vibration from an external source could be all it takes to make the tower collapse. The physicists on the interface team ran the models. The energy required to do this is minuscule. It's not about brute force, it's about frequency. If the signal from 3I Atlas contained a low-frequency component that matched the natural resonant frequency of Earth's lithosphere, the effect would be amplified enormously. It would be the planetary equivalent of an opera singer shattering a wine glass with a single, perfectly pitched note. Suddenly, the coincidental geological chaos wasn't a coincidence anymore. It was a symptom. The Earth was reacting to the presence of 3I Atlas. Our planet, as a physical system, was hearing the signal, even if we, the conscious life on its surface, were not. This added a new layer of urgency to the interface team's mission. If 3I Atlas could inadvertently trigger earthquakes just by its presence, what would a deliberate, stronger broadcast do? Was the object's slow, gentle approach a form of planetary-scale triage, a way of testing the system's stability before engaging more directly? It's like an electrician tapping a wire to check if it's live before grabbing it with full force. This also cast a new, sinister light on our planet's ongoing climate crisis. We have always assumed that the rapid, chaotic changes in our weather patterns were our fault alone, a self-inflicted wound caused by our own industrial activity, and that is largely true. But what if there's another variable we've missed? The interface team started looking for long-term correlations between historical reports of great comets and periods of abrupt climate change in the geological record. The data is noisy and inconclusive, but there are hints. Periods of unusual comet activity in the past sometimes align with periods of sudden global warming or cooling. The connection is weak, but it's there. What if these seeds don't just influence biology? What if their purpose is to fine-tune a planet's entire climate system over geological time? By subtly altering the sun's output, by interacting with the planetary magnetosphere, such an object could nudge a planet towards habitability or away from it. Our current climate instability, which we have claimed as our own proud, disastrous achievement, might actually be the result of a delicate system being pushed out of equilibrium by an external influence. We've been like a child, furiously scribbling on a masterpiece with crayons, completely unaware that the canvas itself is being slowly repainted by an unseen master artist in the background. The sheer irony is overwhelming. For generations, a fierce debate has raged between those who believe climate change is man-made and those who claim it is a natural cycle. The horrible, universe-level joke might be that they are both right. It is a natural cycle, but it is a cycle that is being orchestrated. We are a part of a system being managed, and our own panicked attempts to fix the climate might be as futile as a plant trying to photosynthesize its way out of a greenhouse. This doesn't absolve us of responsibility for our own actions. Of course, we are still pumping carbon into the atmosphere, but it adds a layer of fatalistic dread to the equation. We may not be the sole architects of our own destruction. We might just be a side effect. This makes the mission of the interface camp not just about proving our consciousness, but about seizing control of our own planetary narrative. Their attempt to modulate Earth's magnetosphere is more than just a reply. It's a declaration of independence, a statement that says, this planet is not just a passive garden. It is a home, and we, its conscious inhabitants, are now taking the helm. It is a desperate, almost comically brave gesture. A handful of human scientists, armed with nothing but their intelligence and a few hundred years of scientific knowledge, are attempting to get the attention of an entity that is billions of years old and speaks the language of stars. They are the mice, living in the walls of a grand house, who have decided to squeak in a mathematically structured pattern, hoping that the owners of the house will notice them and, more importantly, will decide not to call the exterminator. Their hope is that the gardeners aren't looking for a perfect, silent, obedient crop. That maybe, just maybe, they have been waiting all along for the flowers to finally speak back. And with the peak of 3I Atlas's perihelion now just days away, the time to speak is running out. The quiet hum in our DNA is getting louder, and the planet beneath our feet is beginning to tremble in response. This makes the mission of the interface camp even more critical. They are trying to insert our voice into a conversation that has, until now, been happening above our heads. They're working on a broadcast, a way to subtly alter Earth's own magnetospheric song in a way that is unmistakably artificial. It wouldn't be a radio signal. That's like trying to communicate with a symphony orchestra by banging on a drum. Their plan is to use a network of ground-based, very low-frequency transmitters to create a tiny, controlled resonance in the Earth's ionosphere. It would be a faint, structured pulse, a mathematical hello, written in the language of plasma physics, a signature that an intelligence that communicates with a star might actually recognize. A signature that says, "We are aware." It's an attempt to prove that the seed on project, Earth has not just sprouted, but has achieved self-awareness. The gamble is enormous. If the entity behind 3I Atlas is a benign gardener, such a signal could be the moment of joyous first contact, a sign that the project has been a success. It could be the trigger for a new phase of communication, perhaps a more direct one. But if the entity is not a gardener, if it is something else, a resource extractor, a celestial exterminator, or something so alien that its motives are utterly incomprehensible, then such a signal would be the equivalent of a mouse voluntarily tapping the cat on the shoulder. It's an announcement, here we are. And it carries the profound risk of an unwelcome response. The interface team is aware of this. They have debated the ethics of speaking for Earth without permission, but they have come to the conclusion that the risk of remaining silent is even greater. If they do nothing, and the entity concludes its survey and departs, having written off our world as an interesting but non-sentient biological experiment, humanity may lose its only chance to participate in its own destiny. They have chosen to gamble on the hope that consciousness is valued. This puts the official silence of the world's governments in a much more understandable, if still frustrating, light. It's likely they know. The data from the solar probes and the genetic code is too big to be contained within a single lab. Key leaders and security agencies around the world have almost certainly been briefed, and they are paralyzed. Do they reveal the truth and risk global, existential chaos? Do they secretly support the interface team's desperate attempt at contact, or do they try to shut it down, fearing the consequences? The most likely scenario, is that they are doing what all bureaucracies do when faced with an impossible problem. They are forming committees. They are holding secret meetings. They are writing contingency plans. And they are waiting. Waiting to see what 3i Atlas does next. Waiting to see if the problem will simply, somehow, go away. It's a perfectly human response. It's also perfectly, comically, inadequate. And while they wait, a small group of brave, terrified scientists are preparing to shout into the void, using our own planet as their microphone, in the desperate hope that someone is listening and that they will be happy with what they hear. As this silent, high-stakes drama unfolds at the very heart of our solar system, another, seemingly unrelated mystery has been quietly developing in the background. It is a mystery that deals with another form of communication, another kind of silent signal. And it may be the final piece we need to understand the true nature of what is happening. For the past year, something has been going wrong with Starlink. Starlink, the ambitious satellite internet constellation built by SpaceX, is designed to be a triumph of autonomous, reliable engineering. Thousands of small, mass-produced satellites orbit the Earth in vast, interconnected chains, providing internet access to the most remote corners of the globe. Each satellite is a marvel of miniaturization, equipped with advanced ion thrusters, sophisticated communication arrays, and an AI-powered guidance system that allows it to maintain its orbit and, crucially, to deorbit itself safely at the end of its life. The plan was always for these satellites to be a closed-loop system. When a satellite nears the end of its 5-year operational lifespan, or if it malfunctions, it is programmed to use its onboard thrusters to lower its orbit, ensuring it burns up completely in the Earth's atmosphere. A clean, responsible, and fully automated process. But something has changed. Beginning in late 2024 and accelerating throughout 2025, an unusually high number of Starlink satellites have been deorbiting themselves, not at the end of their 5-year lives, but years ahead of schedule. At first, SpaceX and the astronomical community dismissed it as an expected failure rate. When you have thousands of complex machines in orbit, a certain percentage will inevitably fail, but the rate has continued to climb, far exceeding the company's own projections. It's not just a few random failures. It's a statistically significant trend. Perfectly healthy satellites, some just a year or two old, are initiating their deorbit sequence, falling from the sky like silent, burning rain. The official explanation from SpaceX has been, to put it politely, vague. They've spoken of anomalous space weather, higher than expected atmospheric drag, and a proactive approach to deorbiting potentially problematic units. These are all plausible factors, but they don't fully explain the scale or the timing of the phenomenon. Atmospheric drag does increase during periods of high solar activity, causing satellites in low Earth orbit to decay faster. But the current solar cycle, while active, isn't extreme enough to account for the number of satellites that are coming down. This is where the interface camp and their paranoid brilliant analysis comes in. They have been tracking these deorbits not as an engineering problem, but as a behavioral one, and they've found a pattern that is so strange, so unbelievable, that they have hesitated to even share it outside their own closed circle. The deorbits are not random, they are happening in synchronized clusters, and these clusters are not random in time. They appear to be correlated with near-perfect precision with the arrival of specific, high-energy particle streams from the Sun. The very same solar wind that 3i Atlas is now bending. Here's what they believe is happening. The Starlink satellites, with their vast numbers and interconnected network, are not just a communication system. They have, entirely by accident, become a planet-sized antenna, a passive, but incredibly sensitive, detector for the very frequencies that 3i Atlas is using to speak to our Sun. The sophisticated electronics that run each satellite, the processors, the communication arrays, the guidance systems are, like all electronics, susceptible to electromagnetic interference. Normally, this isn't a problem, they are shielded. But the signal from 3I Atlas, amplified and focused by the sun's own magnetic field, is not normal. It's a complex, structured, and powerful signal that is ringing the entire planet's magnetosphere like a bell. And the Starlink satellites are hearing it. The interface team believes that this signal is not just noise, it's a form of information, a complex data stream, and it's inadvertently triggering a kill switch in the satellite's AI. The satellite's guidance system, when confronted with a type of energetic input it was never designed to handle, is interpreting the signal as a catastrophic, unrecoverable system failure. Following its core programming, if something goes wrong that you can't fix, deorbit yourself to prevent becoming space junk. The satellite dutifully performs its final maneuver and destroys itself. It's not a malfunction. It's the AI following its rules perfectly. It has been presented with an impossible situation, and its only logical response is self-immolation. The brutal, cosmic sarcasm of this cannot be overstated. We have, in our attempt to blanket the world in internet signals, accidentally built the perfect detection system for an alien signal that is, in turn, telling our machines to commit suicide. This is the ultimate, it's not a bug, it's a feature. The very complexity and intelligence of our own network has become its greatest vulnerability. It is a system that is too smart for its own good. It has no framework for an event like this, so its only response is to shut itself down. This provides the first piece of hard, falsifiable evidence for the interface camp's theory. If they are right, then the synchronized deorbit events should correlate not just with solar activity, but with the specific pulse frequency of 3I Atlas. And that is exactly what the data shows. The spikes in Starlink deorbits match the 4.3-second pulse, or its harmonics, with a statistical significance that is simply impossible to explain by chance. This isn't just a correlation anymore. This is a fingerprint. The implications are immediate and dire. The entity behind 3I Atlas is not just capable of communicating with a star. Its voice is powerful enough and structured enough to have a direct physical effect on our most advanced technology. It can, without any hostile intent at all, simply by speaking, cause our global communication network to begin dismantling itself. This isn't an invasion. This is an incompatibility. It's like a 19th century telegraph system trying to process a 5G data stream. The old hardware just fries. This makes the question of what happens at perihelion exponentially more terrifying. If this is what the object's signal can do from its current distance, what happens when it gets closer to the sun, when its energy interaction peaks, when its broadcast reaches maximum power? Will it just cause a few more satellites to deorbit, or will its voice be loud enough to have a cascading effect on our entire technological infrastructure? Power grids, financial networks, military command and control systems all are run by the same kinds of sophisticated electronics. All are, in theory, susceptible to the same kind of energetic glitch. It presents a horrifying choice. Do we turn everything off? Do we try to shield ourselves from the signal, effectively blinding and deafening ourselves to the rest of the cosmos in the hope of surviving the close pass? Or do we leave everything on in the hope that our systems will withstand the onslaught, or that the interface camp's desperate attempt to reply will be heard and understood? To the world's governments, who are almost certainly aware of this now, neither option is acceptable. This is the ultimate no-win scenario, and it explains their silence better than any simple cover-up ever could. They're not just hiding a UFO. They are grappling with the fact that our entire technological civilization may have a fundamental and perhaps fatal design flaw. It is a flaw that we never knew existed because we never had a reason to. Until now, Our greatest strength, our intelligent, interconnected network, is now our greatest weakness. The cosmic joke is on us. We have built a world that is perfectly tuned to hear the song of the stars. We just never considered that the song might be a frequency that shatters glass. The pattern of Starlink deorbits offers a stark, quantitative measure of the ongoing interaction. Each satellite that falls from the sky is a data point, a tiny, burning confirmation that the signal is real and that it is having a measurable physical effect. This moves the entire phenomenon out of the realm of abstract theory and into the world of tangible engineering problems. Suddenly, the astronomers, the geneticists, and the astrophysicists are no longer the most important people in the room. The most important people are now the electrical engineers, the network specialists, and the AI programmers, the very people who built the system that is now beginning to fail. And the question they are being asked, in quiet, panicked meetings, is a simple one. Can you patch it? Can you issue a software update to the thousands of satellites in orbit to make them ignore this one specific alien frequency? The answer is maybe. In theory, it's possible. You could create a filter, a line of code that tells the AI, if you see an energy signature with these specific characteristics, ignore it. It's not a system failure. It's something else. But it's an incredibly risky proposition. The signal is not just a simple sine wave. It's a complex, modulated pattern. Filtering it out without accidentally filtering out legitimate diagnostic signals for real system failures is a task of surgical precision. Make the filter too broad, and you blind the AI to real problems, creating a fleet of flying liabilities. Make it too narrow, and you might miss the signal's subtle variations, leaving the kill switch intact. And even if you could design the perfect patch, you have to deliver it. You have to broadcast a firmware update to thousands of satellites, a process that is itself vulnerable to data corruption or even hijacking. And you have to do it without tipping your hand. The moment SpaceX issues a global, emergency patch to its entire constellation for a previously unknown type of solar interference, the world's intelligence agencies and the public are going to ask some very pointed questions. The secret will be out, so the engineers are trapped. Their beautiful, self-regulating network is slowly bleeding to death, and the only cure might be worse than the disease. This puts the behavior of other satellite operators into a new light. In recent months, several other communication and surveillance constellations, both commercial and military, have reported anomalous behavior from their satellites, units going into unexpected safe modes, experiencing phantom commands, or suffering from unexplained battery drain. At the time, these were all treated as isolated, random failures. But the interface camp, looking at the collected data, sees a single, unified cause. It's not just Starlink. Every sufficiently advanced piece of electronics in orbit is hearing the signal. The less complex, older satellites are immune. They're too dumb to be confused. But the newest, most sophisticated machines, the ones with the most advanced AI and the most sensitive sensors, are the most vulnerable. They are the ones being tricked into shutting themselves down. It is a stunning, ironic form of natural selection, but for technology, the most advanced systems are the first to die. This leaves the interface team with one last, desperate card to play. Their plan to modulate Earth's ionosphere to send a reply is no longer just about proving our consciousness. It's now also an attempt at a planetary scale handshake protocol. The mathematical signal they hope to generate is not just a hello, it's a query, a question broadcast in the universal language of math and physics, a message that says, "We recognize your signal. We are a technological civilization. We are detecting interference with our systems. Can you adjust your frequency?" It is a polite but firm request to please turn down the volume. It is the most audacious and desperate piece of technical support in human history. They are, in effect, trying to file a bug report with God. And they have to hope that the entity on the other end is not just intelligent, but is also a good listener, and that it is willing and able to make the requested adjustment. If it works, the Starlink deorbits will stop. The planetary systems will stabilize. The signal of our sentience will have been received and acknowledged. It will be the single greatest achievement in human history. If it doesn't work, if the signal is ignored or misunderstood, or if the entity simply doesn't care, then the consequences are binary. Either our technology adapts and finds a way to shield itself, or the signal from 3I Atlas, as it reaches its peak power at perihelion, will continue to dismantle our orbital infrastructure, satellite by satellite, until we are left, once again, silent, isolated, and alone in the darkness. The ultimate irony, the first sign of intelligent life from the cosmos, might be the very thing that sends our own global intelligence back to the Stone Age. This frantic, hidden race to understand the technological impact of 3I Atlas provides the final, crucial context for its own physical journey. While our engineers battle its invisible influence, the object itself has been continuing its inexorable fall toward the sun, preparing for its moment of closest approach, its perihelion. For a normal comet, this is a moment of spectacular violence, a brutal trial by fire. For 3I Atlas, it represents the ultimate test of its impossible characteristics, and potentially, the moment its true purpose is finally executed. A comet's perihelion is the most dramatic event in its long, quiet life. After spending millennia in the deep freeze of the outer solar system, it plunges into the furnace. The sun's radiation, which had been a faint and distant warmth, becomes a relentless, overwhelming torrent. Temperatures on the nucleus surface can skyrocket to hundreds of degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. This intense heat does not just melt the ice. It causes it to sublimate, to flash boil directly from a solid into a gas. This explosive outgassing is what creates the comet's magnificent coma and tail, an envelope of gas and dust that can swell to be larger than planets. But it's also an act of self-destruction. Every ton of gas that erupts from the nucleus is a ton of the comet's very substance, lost forever to space. A comet is a thing that dies to be beautiful. But the violence isn't just thermal. The nucleus is also subjected to immense physical stress. As the sun heats one side, while the other remains frozen in shadow, a massive temperature gradient builds up across the rock. This creates thermal stress, cracks that form and propagate through the nucleus. It's like pouring boiling water onto a frozen rock. It shatters. On top of that, the sun's gravity exerts powerful tidal forces, trying to pull the comet apart. A comet is not a solid, monolithic object. It's a rubble pile, a loose collection of ice and rock held together by its own feeble gravity. At perihelion, the sun's tidal forces can easily overwhelm that fragile structure, and the comet can simply disintegrate, breaking into a cloud of fragments that quickly disperse and fade. We've seen this happen many times. The great comet of 1882, for example, fragmented into several pieces as it passed the sun. Comet Ison in 2013 was predicted to be a once-in-a-generation spectacle, but it didn't survive perihelion, emerging on the other side as nothing but a ghost of dust. This is the gauntlet that 3I Atlas must now run. All of the impossible characteristics we have observed, the planetary scale magnetosphere, the rhythmic energy modulation, the structural integrity implied by its impossible age, will be put to the ultimate test. If it is just a strange but natural comet, it is highly vulnerable. Its large size and active outgassing suggest it's a first-time visitor from the Oort cloud, its surface covered in highly volatile ices that have never before been exposed to the sun. These pristine comets are often the most fragile. They outgas violently and are prone to spectacular, early disintegration. Many astronomers, the ones in the ostrich camp, have quietly predicted that this will be the fate of 3I Atlas, that it will put on a brief, spectacular show at perihelion and then simply fall apart, providing a perfectly natural, if slightly anticlimactic, end to this whole strange story. But the interface camp fears the opposite. If 3I Atlas is not a natural comet, if it is an engineered object, then perihelion is not a threat. It is an opportunity. It is the moment of maximum energy, the moment a star-feeding machine is closest to its food source. The rhythmic pulses of light, the Webb telescope observed, are likely to intensify. The bending of the solar wind will become more pronounced. Its conversation with the sun will reach its crescendo. And what will be the purpose of that crescendo? Here, the speculation splits into two equally terrifying paths. The first path is the broadcast theory. In this scenario, 3I Atlas has been quietly absorbing and storing energy from the sun during its entire inbound journey. Perihelion is the moment it uses that stored energy, plus the overwhelming torrent of incoming solar radiation, to unleash a single, powerful, and highly directional broadcast. A signal. Not to us, we are still irrelevant, but a signal to its home system or to other nodes in its galactic network. A message that says, "Mission complete, garden tended," or simply, "Data packet enclosed." Such a broadcast would be unimaginably powerful, using the sun itself as a gravitational lens to focus the signal into a tight, interstellar beam. We wouldn't even be able to detect it unless we were directly in its path. And if it worked, the object would have fulfilled its primary purpose. Its work done, it might then go dormant, returning to its passive, rock-like state for the long journey back out into the void. The second, and more concerning, path is the activation theory. This connects back to the genetic marker, the hidden receiver in our DNA. In this scenario, the broadcast is not aimed outward, but inward, at us. The signal 3I Atlas has been pulsing, has been a low-power, standby signal. Perihelion is the moment it unleashes the high-power execute command, a planetary-scale energetic event designed to trigger a specific response in the biology of our world. A biological software update delivered via starfire. We have absolutely no way of knowing what such an update would do. Would it be benign, a kind of evolutionary leap forward, or would it be a kill switch, a planetary-scale command-delete for a project that has run its course? The gardeners might be here not to tend the garden, but to plow it under and plant something new. In a way, there's a corny sort of humor to be found here. Humanity's greatest fear has always been an alien invasion with spaceships and lasers. The reality might be far more insidious and far less cinematic. An alien invasion conducted via a silent, planetary-scale software patch that uses a frequency we carry in our own cells. The final battle for Earth wouldn't be a war. It would be an argument between our old genetic code and a new set of instructions. And it's a battle that would be fought and won or lost inside every living thing on the planet simultaneously before we even knew it had begun. The approaching perihelion of 3I Atlas, therefore, is not just a date on an astronomical calendar. It is a deadline, a countdown. It is the moment that one of these possibilities will begin to unfold, and our window for observation, for action, for even simple comprehension, may slam shut. Against this backdrop of cosmic deadlines and existential dread, a very different kind of celestial story has been unfolding. A story not of arrival, but of departure. A story not about a mysterious visitor, but about our own clumsy, ambitious, and sometimes comically inadequate attempts to become visitors ourselves. And that is the story of Psyche. NASA's Psyche mission, launched in late 2023, is one of the most exciting ventures in modern planetary science. Its destination is an object of the same name, 16 Psyche, a truly enormous metallic asteroid orbiting in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter. What makes Psyche special is that it appears to be the exposed iron core of a dead planet. A world that was forming in the early solar system got big enough to differentiate for its heavy metals to sink to the center and form a core, and then was shattered in a series of colossal ancient collisions. All that's left is the heart, a giant, potato-shaped chunk of nickel iron, hundreds of kilometers across, tumbling through space. It's a tantalizing target. It offers us our only chance to study a planetary core up close, a window into the very processes that built our own world. The Psyche spacecraft is a technological marvel in its own right. It's propelled not by conventional chemical rockets, but by Hall effect thrusters. These are a form of solar electric propulsion, a new generation of incredibly efficient ion engines. They use solar panels to generate electricity, which then ionizes xenon gas and accelerates it out the back of the spacecraft using powerful magnetic fields. The thrust is incredibly gentle, about the force you'd feel holding a few sheets of paper in your hand. It's a whisper, not a roar. But in the frictionless vacuum of space, that gentle push, applied continuously for months and years, adds up. The spacecraft can reach speeds far beyond what any chemical rocket could achieve on a similar fuel budget. It is the slow, patient, and elegant future of interplanetary travel. And this is where Psyche's story takes a bizarre and suspicious turn, intersecting with the mystery of 3I Atlas. As 3I Atlas made its journey through the inner solar system, its path took it through the main asteroid belt, and, through a beautiful but now deeply unsettling coincidence of orbital mechanics, its trajectory brought it remarkably close to the Psyche spacecraft. It wasn't a rendezvous. It wasn't even a particularly close flyby in astronomical terms, still millions of kilometers, but it was close enough. It was a golden, unrepeatable opportunity for us to get a second set of eyes on the interstellar visitor from a completely different perspective and with a different suite of instruments. The Psyche spacecraft, with its own advanced cameras and spectrometers, was perfectly positioned to be our secret agent in the field. It could have captured images and data that would have settled many of the questions swirling around 3I Atlas. The astronomical community was electric with anticipation. Unofficial plans were drawn up. Scientists used public data to calculate the exact timing, the optimal pointing angles, the expected brightness. Could Psyche's cameras resolve the object? What would its spectrometers see? Then, in September 2025, just as the observation window was opening, the unthinkable happened. Psyche went silent. The public data stream from the spacecraft, which had been providing regular telemetry updates, simply stopped. The link to NASA's public servers, the portals where amateurs and professionals alike could track the probe's health and position, went dark. The silence was absolute, and at first, completely unexplained. Days turned into a week. Rumors began to fly. Had the spacecraft suffered a catastrophic malfunction? Had it been hit by a micrometeoroid? But NASA's official line was a quiet, clinical, and profoundly unsatisfying one. The spacecraft was entering a period of planned diagnostics. It was off-nominal, but stable. They were evaluating the data. These are the standard, non-committal phrases of institutional damage control. It's the engineering equivalent of, "We're not fighting, we're just having a loud discussion." But the timing was too perfect, too theatrically awful to be a simple coincidence. At the exact moment, our best-placed asset for observing 3I Atlas should have been staring it down, it turned its back and went to sleep. The data that it would have collected during that crucial flyby window, the raw, unfiltered truth about the interstellar object, is now missing, and NASA has provided no clear explanation as to why. This is where the theory of an information quarantine becomes almost unavoidable. If you are an agency that has detected something about 3I Atlas that is too strange, too dangerous to share. What do? You can't tell all the world's telescopes to stop looking. That would be an admission of a cover-up. But you can control your own assets. You can find a very plausible technical reason to take your best instrument offline at the most critical moment. A planned diagnostic cycle is the perfect excuse. It's routine, it's unexciting, and it's a black box. No one from the outside can prove that the diagnostics aren't necessary. The implications are chilling. It suggests that someone, somewhere, made a conscious decision that it was better not to know, or, perhaps, that it was better for us not to know. It's possible that an early, low-resolution observation from Psyche, as 3I Atlas approached, was what triggered this whole cascade. That the spacecraft saw something so unambiguous, so clearly anomalous, that the only rational response from mission control was to shut the data feed down before it saw any more, to contain the discovery before it could leak out. The public was told the government shut down a few weeks later. What a convenient story. But this happened weeks before any of that. The silence around Psyche may have been the real beginning of the silence around 3I Atlas itself. We are left with a ghost, an empty chair at the table of discovery. Psyche was our star witness, and it was taken out of the courtroom before it could testify. The raw data from that encounter is almost certainly sitting on a secure server somewhere at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and it is a digital time bomb. Whatever is in those files has the potential to either confirm that 3I Atlas is just an exotic but natural comet, making this all a storm in a teacup, or it has the potential to validate every wild, terrifying theory we've discussed. That our universe is not what we thought, that we are not alone, and that our solitude was not an accident of physics, but a condition that we have just, in our clumsy search for knowledge, violated. And now, the rest is silence. This series of impossible anomalies and suspicious silences forces us to confront the central burning question. If 3I Atlas is artificial, what is its mission? The answer might be found not by looking at the object itself, but by looking at our own planet. In recent decades, a strange and disturbing pattern has emerged in Earth's own geological and atmospheric data, a pattern that, until now, has been dismissed as statistical noise. Volcanic activity, on a global scale, appears to be increasing, and the timing of these increases shows a faint but persistent correlation with our planet's passage through specific, debris-rich regions of the solar system. The galactic current theory, a fringe but fascinating hypothesis, proposes that our solar system periodically drifts through dense interstellar clouds of dust and gas left behind by ancient supernovas. As Earth passes through these clouds, our planet accumulates a significant amount of this exotic dust in the upper atmosphere. This is not just a gentle sprinkle. The theory suggests these clouds can be so dense that thousands of tons of this material rain down on our planet every day during a passage. And this dust is not inert. It is catalytically active. It is rich in heavy elements and strange isotopes forged in the heart of a dying star. When this dust seeds our atmosphere, it can trigger dramatic and unpredictable changes. It can alter the formation of clouds, leading to sudden shifts in global weather patterns. It can even, the theory proposes, filter down into the oceans and the crust, subtly changing the chemistry of the mantle itself, potentially leading to an increase in magma pressure and volcanic activity. In this context, 3I Atlas takes on a terrifying new identity. What if it is not just a seed? What if it is a delivery mechanism, a geoengineering tool of immense power and patience, a planet shaper? The theory, known as interstellar terraforming, suggests that an advanced civilization might not search for habitable planets. They might make them. They send out massive objects, like 3I Atlas, loaded with a specific payload of dust and catalytically active materials. The object's mission is simple: to travel to a promising young star system, and at perihelion, to detonate, not with a violent explosion, but with a controlled, massive outgassing, to release its payload of terraforming dust into the inner solar system, creating a dense, artificial debris cloud that the target planet Earth, in this case, will then pass through on its yearly orbit. This is a plan of staggering patience and scale. The goal is not to conquer, but to cultivate. Over thousands of years, as Earth repeatedly passes through this engineered dust cloud, its atmosphere and geology would be slowly, deliberately altered. The chemistry would be changed to better suit the biology of the terraforming civilization. Our planet would be slowly prepped for colonization. We have always imagined aliens would arrive in ships. The reality might be far more insidious. They might arrive as dust, and 3I Atlas, with its bizarre chemistry, its massive size, and its perfectly timed arrival, looks, for all the world, like a candidate for just such a mission. Its impending perihelion is not a moment of danger. It is the moment of execution, the moment the dust bomb is scheduled to go off. And here's the corniest part. We'd never see it coming. To us, it would look like a beautiful, but perfectly natural, cometary display. The sky would light up, a magnificent tail would stretch across the heavens. We would watch in awe, completely unaware that we were witnessing the deliberate and systematic contamination of our own world, the beginning of a process designed to make it a home for someone else. And by the time our geology started to react on a large scale, the visitor would be long gone, a silent, invisible ghost receding back into the dark from whence it came. We wouldn't be invaded. We would be re-landscaped, and our own existence might be little more than the weeds that need to be cleared before the new garden can be planted. The approaching peak of 3I Atlas's perihelion is therefore a moment of profound, terrible ambiguity. Are we about to witness the spectacular death of a comet, or the patient, quiet, and beautiful beginning of our own extinction? This terrifying planet shaper theory, with its vision of a slow, beautiful apocalypse delivered as dust, almost makes one long for a simpler, more straightforward kind of cosmic danger. And the universe, as if on cue, has decided to provide one. As the world remains transfixed by the grand mystery of 3I Atlas, a second, more brutish threat has slipped into our neighborhood almost completely unnoticed. A threat that reminds us that not all cosmic dangers are subtle and philosophical. Some are just big, fast, and alarmingly close. On September 11th, 2025, an amateur astronomer in Japan, sifting through public data from a solar observation satellite, spotted a faint smudge where no smudge should be. It was a comet, a new one. It was quickly designated C 2025 R2, also known as Comet Swan, and at first, it seemed like a routine discovery, another chunk of ice from the Oort cloud, making its once every 20,000-year trip to the inner solar system. Nothing to worry about, except for one small, inconvenient detail. No one saw it coming. The comet had spent its entire inbound journey hidden in the sun's glare, a perfect blind spot for our planet-wide network of asteroid-hunting telescopes. It only became visible after it had already whipped around the sun and was on its way back out. And its outbound trajectory, as luck would have it, was taking it directly through Earth's neighborhood. Its closest approach to our planet was scheduled for late October. The distance was calculated to be about 39 million kilometers. That's a safe miss. No one is predicting an impact. But that is uncomfortably close for an object we didn't even know existed until it was practically waving from our cosmic front porch. The story of Comet Swan is a classic of cosmic misdirection. It is the perfect, almost humorously timed, B-plot to the A-plot of 3I Atlas. While the world's greatest scientific minds are tied up in knots debating the existential implications of a star-bending interstellar artifact, a completely ordinary, but potentially very dangerous. Garden variety comet has managed to sneak past all our defenses. It's like a nation spending trillions on a state-of-the-art missile defense shield, only to be invaded by a guy in a rowboat who happened to land on a beach that no one was watching. Comet Swan has been putting on a bit of a show since its discovery. It has flared up in brightness unexpectedly, suggesting it's an unstable, fragmenting object. And it has a minimum orbit intersection distance that's the closest possible gap between its orbit and Earth's of just 7 million kilometers. That is a cosmic hair's breadth. The parent object will miss us, yes. But a fragmenting comet is not a single object. It's a shotgun blast. It spews a trail of debris. If Comet Swan has a major fragmentation event, something its unstable brightness suggests is entirely possible. It could lay down a fresh, dense minefield of dust and rock directly in Earth's orbital path. The supreme irony is that 3I Atlas, the object of all our fears and speculations, has so far been a model citizen. It is following a predictable path, not threatening our planet. Its potential threat is subtle, philosophical, biological. Comet Swan, on the other hand, is the dumb, brutish, and far more familiar danger. It's the kind of blunt instrument that the universe has used to periodically remodel our planet for billions of years. We've become so preoccupied with the new, sophisticated alien threat that we've completely forgotten about the old, reliable, domestic one. It's the ultimate cosmic joke. We are so busy trying to interpret a message from the stars that we have failed to notice the simple, unpoetic freight train that is barreling down the tracks right beside us. And so, we arrive at the precipice. A moment in history defined not by a single, clear threat, but by a cascade of converging, interlocking mysteries. It is a moment of profound, and perhaps engineered, distraction. We are staring at a cosmic shell game, with objects and events moving so quickly it is almost impossible to know which one holds the real danger. On one hand, we have 3I Atlas, an object that is either the greatest scientific discovery in human history or a beautiful but meaningless coincidence. It talks to our sun. It pulses with a rhythm that is mirrored in our own DNA. It may be a seed of life or a machine of unimaginable power. Its threat, if it exists, is subtle, existential, and operates on a level of physics and biology that we are only just beginning to grasp. It is the sophisticated, intellectual threat, the mystery that could rewrite our entire understanding of reality. It commands our attention. It consumes our intellectual resources. It is the perfect, all-consuming puzzle. On the other hand, we have Comet Swan, the simple, brutish threat, an object we didn't see coming, an object that is behaving erratically, and an object that will pass uncomfortably close to our home. Its danger is not philosophical, it is kinetic. It is the simple, brutal math of mass and velocity. It threatens not our understanding of the universe, but our physical existence within it. And it has arrived at the precise moment that our attention is directed elsewhere. It's almost too convenient. The arrival of a loud, obvious, but ultimately manageable distraction to keep us occupied, while the real play unfolds in silence. It's like a magician setting off a firework on the left side of the stage to draw your eyes away from the trick he is performing on the right. And what about our own technological house of cards? The silent, accelerating collapse of our Starlink constellation. The quiet panic spreading through our engineering and defense communities as they realize that the very thing enabling our global intelligence is vulnerable to a signal we cannot block and do not understand. We have, with the best of intentions, built a planetary-scale nervous system, and that nervous system is now experiencing a seizure induced by the whisper of an alien intelligence. The quiet humor is that the problem isn't a weapon aimed at us. The problem is our own system, which is so exquisitely designed, It is capable of hearing a song that shatters it. It is a threat from within, triggered from without. All of these events are culminating in a single, terrifying crescendo over the next few weeks. Perihelion, the moment of maximum interaction, the moment the signal from 3I Atlas will be at its most powerful, the moment the terraforming dust bomb might detonate, the moment our satellite network will face its greatest test. It is the moment that Comet Swan, the perfect distraction, makes its closest, most unpredictable pass. Everything is happening at once. The synchronicity is either the most improbable statistical fluke in the history of the cosmos, or it is the signature of a plan, a beautiful, complex, and utterly ruthless plan, unfolding with the cold clockwork precision of a billion-year-old intelligence. And what are we to do? Our governments are silent, paralyzed by a problem for which no protocol exists. Our scientists are divided, trapped in a bitter war between comforting convention and terrifying data. Our public is distracted, watching a cosmic light show, completely unaware of the stakes. We are alone. We, the quiet observers, the ones who see the connections, who understand the scale of what is unfolding. We are like the handful of people on the deck of the Titanic who have noticed the iceberg, while the rest of the ship is still dancing. We are not Cassandras, screaming of a doom that will not be believed. We are simply witnesses, and all we can do is continue to watch, to document, and to wonder. The joke of it all, the final corny punchline to the story of our existence, is that we have spent our entire history praying not to be alone in the universe. We got our wish. The problem is, when you are not alone, you are also not in charge. And as the final days before perihelion tick away, the terrifying, liberating, and absolutely final truth is beginning to settle in. We are not in charge. We never were. The management is just now, after a very, very long time, finally arriving to check on the property. And we can only hope they are happy with how we've been looking after the place, because the landlord has a look in their eye that suggests they are not here to renew the lease. They're here to renovate. And so, here we are, at the end of our journey, but at the beginning of whatever comes next. We are left not with answers, but with a series of choices. Not choices for our governments or our scientists, for their path is already set by the inertia of institutions. The choices are for us, for the observers. Do we choose the comforting story? The story where 3I Atlas is just a quirky but natural comet, where Comet Swan is an unrelated and minor threat, where the Starlink failures are just engineering problems, where the code in our DNA is just a statistical illusion, and where the synchronized earthquakes were just a run of bad luck. This is the story of coincidence. It is a story that requires no action. It allows us to go back to sleep. It is, by far, the easiest and most tempting choice. Or do we choose the terrifying story? The story where the connections are real, where 3I Atlas is a messenger, a gardener, or a tool of an intelligence so vast our minds can barely grasp its motives. Where Comet Swan is a calculated distraction. Where our technology is being quietly dismantled by a signal from the stars. Where our own biology is a dormant program, waiting for an activation command. Where our planet is a garden, being prepared for a new harvest. This is the story of purpose. It is a story that demands that we be awake, that we be vigilant, and that we recognize the sheer, terrifying scale of our own cosmic insignificance. The scientific method, in its purest form, demands that we withhold judgment until the evidence is conclusive. It asks us to live in the uncomfortable space of uncertainty. But we are not just scientists. We are human beings. And we are living through the days of peak uncertainty, the final moments before the curtain is pulled back. We cannot afford the luxury of waiting for the peer-reviewed papers to be published. Our instincts, the ancient, pattern-matching survival software that has kept our species alive for 100,000 years, is screaming. It is screaming that a pattern this perfect, this synchronized, this elegantly constructed, is not an accident. And so, in these final moments, let's not pretend this is an academic exercise. This has been our quiet, desperate attempt to ring an alarm that no one else is willing to sound, to document the converging evidence, and to state, for the record, that humanity may be standing on the threshold of a change so profound it has no precedent. We have presented the science, the speculation, and the almost unbearable sarcasm of our situation. We are witnesses to a cosmic play whose final act is about to begin. The only choice left is whether we watch it with our eyes wide open, or whether we choose to believe, until the very last moment, that it was all just a bad dream. In the nights to come, as 3i Atlas rounds the sun, and its voice grows to a crescendo, keep watch, not just on the skies, but on our world. Watch our technology, watch our planet's geology, and perhaps, most importantly, watch for the subtle, quiet changes in the world around you, in the very patterns of life. For the message we have been waiting for, the proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, might not come as a fleet of silver ships descending from the heavens. It may come as a silent planetary-scale fever, the quiet, graceful, and unstoppable activation of a program that was written in our stars and in our cells from the very beginning. Thank you for observing with me. The vigil is not over. It has just begun. Sleep well, if you can. The cosmos will still be here in the morning, spinning its mysteries, waiting. But we may find, when we wake, that the universe and our place within it has been quietly, irrevocably, and profoundly updated